And that's kind of a part of how I healed, was laughing, if I'm going to be completely honest with you. I find myself laughing through a lot of hardship because it can be worse.
It is.
It can be worse.
It is.
And there's always some funny part to it. It's never always just, that's something horrible.
Welcome to Innovation Somalia. I am your host, Abdul Ali. I'm coming to you from Columbus, Ohio. I'm really excited. Today I have
Amren Youssouf.
Amren Youssouf. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for taking the time.
No problem.
I know you're busy. You know, your mom. I mean,
it's okay.
Mad
it's okay.
respect.
It's definitely a welcome distraction.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
No problem.
So, Columbus.
Yeah.
I mean, you were pretty much born here, raised here.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of Columbus?
I used to really love Columbus. I used to really love it because when we were younger, just like most of us when we come from like Africa, although I was born here, obviously my parents weren't born here, right?
Right.
So I remember when they I don't remember when they immigrated, but when they immigrated, we used to live in these apartments called Sullivan Gardens, and it was apparently the ghetto. Now as an adult, it was the hood, it was the projects,
Right.
I didn't know that as a child, but I have the best memories from those days. And it was right before the Somalis started coming.
Okay.
So the neighborhood was predominantly African American, and in our square there was nothing but Asians, and then our family. And looking back now, I realized that the office that would place you into your apartment intentionally placed all the foreigners in one square. So we all had fun. Like, I still remember how to speak some Cambodian and some Laotian because of that experience. And then the Somalis came, and it was awesome. It was such a small community. I still didn't know about 𝐕𝐈𝐃𝐄. I knew nothing about 𝐕𝐈𝐃𝐄 for the longest time. All Somalis were my uncles and aunties. And every Eid, we would rent a party house in one of their apartment complexes. Mm-hmm. And it would be so fun. And they would line all the kids up, and they would force us to sing the Somali national anthem.
Really?
Yeah. There would be gift exchanges and everything. This is Columbus, Ohio. Some of the prominent figures in our city now, the Somali national anthem. I'll never forget. I had no clue. I had to learn for Eid. Maya, we're not going to do that here today.
But do you know?
I would go along as a child, and I feel like I was definitely pronouncing words incorrectly, but I was hiding behind the crowd, and no one noticed. Like, I tried my hardest, and I thought I was holding it down.
Can
but
you
as
even
an adult,
start
Somalia Tosa. That's it. I'm not gonna possibly make a mistake that I'm gonna never be able to live down in this city. Okay.
I'll try not to make you that.
But next time, I'll make sure that all my pronunciation is
okay,
and I'll bring it back for you. Okay. But so there would be like really cute gift exchanges. Like, there was like a little mini dance floor, and some of my best memories are from those days. Like, and people back then have become pretty prominent, like, throughout the world, in my opinion, not just within Columbus. Like, a lot of the people from back then are, doing major things in government elsewhere. But yeah, those were definitely my favorite times. And I still don't know what their tribes are till today. I still don't know what their tribes are. I know what my tribe is.
Right.
But yeah, so Columbus since then has changed, though.
Do you still keep in touch with your childhood friends?
No, I think everyone kind of branched off and did their own thing. And I'm 35. These are 35 years young. Yeah, we can say that. I'm okay with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I mean, if you think about it, what used to be the new 30 is the new 40 and all that. And
yeah. Right now I'm raising a toddler, so it definitely feels old.
It does.
It definitely feels old.
Too.
But as she grows, I'll get back to feeling like I'm in my 20s, okay? But so now, how do I feel about Columbus?
Right.
I feel like I don't know.
Okay.
Like, anyone anymore in this city, which is really odd because, like, as a Somali, I do keep to myself a lot. Uh, there are reasons, motherhood, the pandemic,
Gotcha.
life, everyone kind of takes their own path.
Right.
It's not something that I've done intentionally. It's just something that's happened. Like I have like a close select few friends that I interact with all the time that are Somali. Actually, all of my friends in Columbus are Somali. I just don't feel like I am very involved in the Somali community.
Yeah.
And it's because of my life.
I can relate to that because when I came in the late 90s,
Mm-hmm.
And there was a few families.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, people used to get together,
Mm-hmm.
because you felt like that was the only Somali
Mm-hmm.
families that were around, right?
Strong sense of community.
Strong sense of community, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a lot of more Somalis came,
Mm-hmm.
and so people intend to look there, like you said, like
They've
close
retreated.
relatives.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
so that has a big challenge in with the population. Certainly,
Absolutely.
we're not what we used to be, but hopefully there's a large population here that can do better things down the road. Now, when the Somali community came in, specifically your neighborhood, how did that change to you? Oh, it's that time.
It's noon on
It's
Wednesday,
noon.
guys.
It's
That's
noon
why
on
there's
Wednesday. Exactly.
the tornado sirens in the background.
There's a test every Wednesday at noon. So now, how was your middle school? How's your high school life? Was there like a lot of sense of community in terms of the Somalis? Like, how do you grow up specifically? You?
So middle school, there weren't Somalis still
Okay.
for me. They were here, just not at my middle school. And even as far as neighborhoods, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we came a lot earlier than everyone else. So by the time we moved up and out of the projects, it was when Somalis were first coming and being sent into government housing.
Gotcha.
So we never, there was a brief moment when we were in transition that we were in a neighborhood that had Somalis. And oh my goodness, I have the funniest story.
Go for it.
I was such a foolish child. So because I had this idea, I'll never forget this. Should we wait for the tornado siren to pass?
Let's wait for the tornado to pass.
I recently
I thought
shared
you
this
did.
story with someone and
Okay.
they died. So I thought that every, Somali woman and every Somali man was like my auntie and my uncle. Like
Yeah.
I didn't know any better. And I'll never forget how there was this one lady, I don't remember her name. And so when we were moved out of our first government housing, right? And it was Sullivan Gardens. It's been demolished now. While we were buying the house that my mother moved us into, we stayed in another government housing for maybe like a few months. It wasn't very long at all. And in that neighborhood, there were some Somalis. And there was this one lady, like when I would ride my bike, I would always go to her house and eat cookies. And I would just pop up at her house. And I thought it was, and nobody knew. And she was always kind to me. She was like a Somali mama. Wallah, if I could remember who she is, I would give her a hug and a kiss today. I would just go there. She'd be mopping her floor. And I'd be like, hey, I'm here. And she would give me cookies and tea and I'd be quick Marti and leave.
Quick Marti and go. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember her name?
Akhlaq la'an, right? I had no clue what I was doing. I don't remember her name.
Okay.
I don't remember much about her at all, unfortunately.
Okay.
I just remember this image of her back door being open and me rolling up on her house on my bike and her mopping her floor. She didn't have any children.
Oh.
Like she was alone. She didn't
Yeah.
have any children. And I don't think she ever told my mom, which she probably should have because I shouldn't have been doing that. But that spoke on how I felt when I saw Somalis at a
comfort.
very young age. I really felt like we were all one. And that's because that's how we were raised when it was such a small community here. And we were all family, at least in my head, I thought we were all family. So yeah, that was the only instance that I feel like we were surrounded by Somalis. And there was this other Somali lady that sold candy out of her house. So I would always buy candy from her. But since then, we weren't really
Where did you go to high
surrounded.
school?
Brookhaven.
Okay.
That's where I really had my Somali experience.
Okay. Tell me about that.
So I went to high school at Brookhaven, and that's when a huge influx happened, like 2000, right? It was around 2000.
99 to all the way 2000.
Yeah, and that's when I realized I was different, because I started wearing hijab in high school.
Okay.
I didn't wear hijab in middle school. I didn't wear hijab in elementary. And I think that even if I did wear hijab in middle school and elementary, it wouldn't have been a big deal, because I'm still American, air quotes, right? You know, I still sound like them. I still move like them. But, you know, once Somalis came to Brookhaven, man, like, they were being bullied. And it put me in a position where I was beefing everyone. I was, because it was like, you're bullying her just because she's wearing a jilbab and she doesn't speak English, you know? Yeah, I got into a lot of arguments. Alhamdulillah, no physical confrontations happened. But I definitely had a lot of arguments in high school, and, you know, I was able to bond with this group of Somalis that came from other states, as well as I think even Canada, if I recall correctly.
Okay.
So that's where my Somali
experience
began.
There was a lot of moves back and forth from...
back then. I remember. So I truly had the Somali experience in high school. And I think it was from that point that my friends continued to be Somali.
Gotcha.
Like, and even if I had friends that weren't Somali, they always seemed to be like foreign, like from Ghana or from Pakistan. I never was able to return to having that American crowd, which is really interesting.
Yeah, no, because you share some sort of like common interest.
Yeah,
people that are a little different color, but you know, the same color, different country. Yeah. And similar experiences, similar struggles. That is true.
Similar, power dynamics, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's really what bonded us. Definitely. That was where my Somali experience began, and I've been stuck since. Alhamdulillah.
Did you do any sports?
I did do basketball in middle school.
Okay.
But that was it. In high school, I didn't do any sports. I hated high school. I hated high school because of like the toxic environment that started. You know, because I never felt so different. I never realized how fortunate I was to have come earlier, you know, than to just be like dumped in a country that you don't know the people, you don't know the language, and like quite frankly, like they were treated horribly. We were able to start like the first cultural festival at that school. That was the first cultural festival they'd ever done, and they started doing it every year after that because there was no diversity. You were black or you were white or you were Latino. Aside from that, there was no real diversity until the Somalis came. You see, so
what did they do? I mean, for the culture and festival,
like I think we danced and like there was like a skit.
So
that
there's
was
a whole
done.
Day activity that's playing just for cultural?
It was after school. They didn't give us school hours, of course. It was an after school cultural festival thing that we did.
Gotcha.
Where, you know, families could come and support their kids' performance.
Okay.
And I think someone sang, it was a while ago. I graduated in 2003.
No. I mean, like just the fact that they were able to start something like that.
Yeah.
That shows some sort of recognition, right?
Absolutely. We raised havoc in that school to a degree.
Yeah.
They wouldn't let us pray, so we scheduled a walkout. All this, it was on the news and everything. Yeah, like it was Ramadan and they weren't allowing us to leave for Salat, and we're like, we won't take this. This is illegal, and everybody stormed out of their classes for Salat.
And they should.
Yeah, I mean, but I feel like we were ahead of our times back then. I'm not gonna lie. You know, I definitely feel like we were ahead of our time. And I don't know what I was thinking. I think I just wanted us to be treated fairly, and that was the only way that I knew how to do it. Yeah.
And I think what's pushing you to do that is because you were born here and you grew up here, so you understand when somebody's being put down. You know, like when somebody that just came from abroad, that doesn't speak the language, doesn't understand the culture, you know, so it takes a while for them to get used to it. And you, on the other hand, you might have witnessed it, you might have, you know, you might be able to pick that up. So that's an interesting experience.
Yeah, and then life really started.
Yeah, where did you go to college?
So I went to Columbus State and I went to OSU.
Okay.
But I took a gap 6 months.
Okay.
I don't want to say a gap year. I took a gap 6 months. And then like my life stopped. So I graduated high school at 16. I graduated with my older sister.
Oh, very cool. At 16, that's impressive.
And you know, I was super excited to get out of there. I'm like, let me get my real life started. And then at 19, I had an accident. I'll never forget. I left my house that day. My sister picks up her son. I leave my house, and I stop. I don't even leave the neighborhood. And I'm like, you've spent a month off of this motorcycle, and you didn't ride it, and you literally told yourself that you're going to do better, and here you are on this motorcycle with no helmet. So I turned around. I went into my garage. I found the helmet. There were spider webs in there. But I cleaned it out. I cleaned it really well, and I put it on, and I couldn't find my leather protective jacket, and I thought to myself, nothing's going to happen today, but you can start practicing safety now. So I meet her. We go to the Wendy's, you know, that Wendy's on Tamarack and Morris. Yeah. I had a spicy chicken sandwich combo. And like I just couldn't shake it. Like I remember being there, and I just couldn't shake it. I couldn't shake that I didn't want to be on the bike.
You still had a bad feeling about it.
It wasn't even a bad feeling. It was just like, why am I on this? Because it takes a lot of focus.
Right, it does.
It takes a lot out of you. You have to be extremely cautious. And I have an SUV at home. So, and I'm not far from my house at that point. So my friend's like, hey, let's go to my house. Because she was married, but her husband was in the military. So he was in Spain, and they didn't have any children yet. She's like, we can just go to my house and hang out. And so I tell her, listen, I'm going to go home and drop this bike off. That way I don't risk, because I remember Maghrib being close. And I'm like, I don't want to risk being out late by myself on this motorcycle. So let me just get off of the bike. We met on the bike. I got to ride it for a little bit. She's like, sure. So we get at the light. We're leaving, and we're at the light, and she goes left, and I go right. I got hit at the next light. And I just remember seeing, like, it was the light was yellow, and I couldn't stop. Like, I had to take that yellow. You know what I'm talking about when that happens? And it's like, if I hit my brake too much, I'm going to flip forward anyway. So I'm like, all right, I've got to take it. And then I see this car that's in the turning lane, like, towards me, trying to turn onto, I think it was Northtown or Tamarack. One of those two, where the Ford delership is. Which I don't know what intersection that is.
I know the intersection you're talking about.
Yeah, or it's like a Firestone or something. There's something there. And she stopped. She was making a left turn. I was going straight towards 71, and she stopped. And as I enter the intersection, she guns it. She hits her gas so hard, and I'm like, what is? So I try to escape her. And I can't. Like, she impacts me on the left side of my motorcycle, hits my left leg, and the next thing I know, I'm airbound. I mean, I grew wings. I was flying. So the last memory I have was I was coming down on my head, and then everything blanks until I'm sliding on my back. So I never injured my head, alhamdulillah. But I did tear all of my ligaments and dislocate my right knee, and I tore all the ligaments on my right knee. I broke my femur 3 times on my left side. Crushed my left knee, my tibula, fibula, ankle, foot. It was all shredded. She hit me so hard my shoes and socks came off. Yeah, and I was like, where's my socks and shoes? And I didn't even realize how injured I was as I'm laying on the concrete, and people are like, don't get up. And I'm like and they're like, don't take your helmet off. You could have a neck injury. And I'm like, I think I'm fine, guys. Not even realizing the extent of my injury, because your body enters shock. Absolutely. I didn't feel any pain. I was talking. I was joking. I'm such a weirdo. I was cracking jokes. And then I'll never forget the lady that hit me, 86 years old. I'm like, man, 𝐿𝐻𝐻, I wanted to hold a grudge. I can't even hold a grudge. She's 86 years old, which explains her response. Like, she panicked. Like, she's barely walking. This lady was so old. Like, she was barely walking. And she prays over me, and she speaks to her Lord Jesus. And I'm like, hey, I'm Muslim. So So don't bring that over here. So the ambulance comes. They came very fast, mashallah, very, very fast. But, the fire station right there.
Yeah.
And they put me on the stretcher, and they're like, who's the president? And I'm like, George Washington. I'm still cracking jokes because I don't realize how severe it is. And then they bend my right knee, and they're like, how does that feel? And I'm like, fine. And then they bend it again, and something happened. And the pain kicks in, and I just start screaming, what did you do? And they're like, you got hit by a car, ma'am. We didn't do anything to you. So I spent a lot of time in the hospital. I ended up losing my left leg. If we're going to fast forward a few months. Mm-hmm. I became an amputee on the left side because I got a blood infection.
Okay.
Or was it I got a really bad infection that could have led to a blood infection, which would have ended up in my heart. It might have been a blood infection. I'm not sure if I'm going to be completely honest with you, because it's been over 10 years at this point.
Okay.
And
like at what portion? Like was it like
above
below
the knee?
Above the knee.
I'm an above the knee amputee on the left side. They were able to restore 2 ligaments on my right leg.
Okay.
And like bolt my knee, like the bone together. But I'll never forget, like the doctors were just like, you're so lucky, because I was able to get back on my prosthetic. I was so young that my body just bounced back.
Gotcha.
And then I was walking campus on OSU. I was on, next thing you know, fast forward a couple years, I was able to bounce back and go to OSU and enter the college scene. So
was that the 6 month you were?
No, it took me 2 years to recuperate.
I figured it'll definitely take some.
It took me 2 years to recover. For the longest time, I was walking with a cane, because I had, in order to fix my femur on my left side, because remember it broke 3 times, they had to put this plate in my hip, and there was like 13 bolts, like screws and bolts into the bone. And I'll never forget the pain that I'm like, isn't the plate supposed to help, not hurt? And I could literally, it was right under my skin.
Yeah.
It was right under my skin. And then they're like, just throw that leg in a prosthetic and move like normal. I'm like, it's not possible.
Right.
So I had to actually go back to surgery to get that removed and then recover, because they broke my bone in surgery.
In order to remove it.
And in order to remove the bolts. And then they're like, we couldn't get one bolt out. You still got a bolt in. And I was finally able to drop the cane. I was finally able to carry my weights. And
how old were you at the time?
When I went back to surgery, I think it was about 1.5 years later.
Okay.
I bounced back from that surgery super easy.
Okay.
It was really
Mashallah.
easy. And then I was running from there,
So now, when you had the accident and you were taken off the scene from that day and you were taken to hospital, how long was it when the doctor came and delivered the news to say, hey, you might lose your leg, or you have to lose your leg?
I think it was about a month.
Okay.
I think they tried to save it for about a month. But if I'm going to be completely honest with you, I don't think they... So they said initially, we can save the leg, but she probably won't be able to bend it ever again.
Okay.
So it'll probably be stuck straight because of the amount of damage that's, happened. And I was okay with that. And I came from this belief of, I came into this world whole, I'm leaving it whole. So about a month later, when they said that it was infected, which I feel like was due to neglect,
Okay.
And the fact that my leg was also really injured, like fluids were pouring out of my leg nonstop. They had me hooked up to a machine that would suck the fluids. My bed would be soaked. They would change my bed sheets every few hours, because the fluids from my leg that were supposed to be circulating my body were ending up on the bed,
Right. Yeah.
So it was really disgusting, not to be gory. I'm sorry?
The lymph node in your leg?
Yeah, listen, it was all messed up. It was all messed up, and they had like an immobilizer on it as well. But so it was about a month, and I didn't remember immediately. They took me for debridging, which is what they would do. They would take off the dead skin on the leg, and they would try to like encourage natural healing. And when I went in for debridging, apparently there was like a major infection, and like a doctor caught the infection that wasn't even supposed to. It was my right leg doctor that saw it, actually. And then he was like, you need to amputate her leg or she's gonna die in a few days. And I told him, I came into this world whole, I'm gonna leave it whole. And then I forgot because I was drugged up. I totally forgot the conversation happened. They reported it back to my family, and it took about a day it wasn't even an actual family member that told me, but I could tell that they were like really solemn, and I didn't understand why they were being so weird around me. Like they were being really like soft-spoken, and I don't come from a soft-spoken family, and I could tell they were hiding something from me. And then there was this lady that was a family friend who shouldn't have told me, but she's like, yeah, the doctor said you have to get an amputation or you're going to die. And I'll never forget how angry my family was, because they're like, she shouldn't have told you. But I remember seeing my mom's face in that moment. And I'm like, how could I do this to my mom, who's literally here at the hospital every day, feeding me, bathing me, making sure that I'm taken care of. And then I'm like, oh, deuces, gotta go. Like, that's super inconsiderate, you know? So I agreed to the amputation at that point. And yeah, I mean, the rest is truly here. I was really bummed about not being able to like move as freely. And I remember feeling like no one's going to remember how I used to walk, you know? And like my nephew at that time was, I think, under 10. And I told him, don't ever forget me with my 2 legs. Now it doesn't bother me as much, but back then it felt so heavy. Like, wow, I'm changing.
Right.
You know, my gait, the way that I walk is never going to be the same, you know. And these are signature things with individuals. Like, just imagine if I tell you I'm taking your voice away. And then I'll give you back your voice, but your voice sounds nothing like who you are, Abdul.
Right.
And you're like, but this is not how I've always sounded. You grow attached to like the small aspects of you, like the things that you don't even think about. Alhamdulillah, I feel like that was just the beginning of my journey.
Just the fact that we're here talking about it, laughing, you know, making joking crack out of it, it's a blessing.
Absolutely.
Blessing.
And you know, I feel like I can laugh at myself, and I feel like there's so much irony to my story that it's hard not to laugh. And that's kind of a part of how I healed, was laughing, if I'm going to be completely honest with you. I find myself laughing through a lot of hardship, because it can be worse.
It is.
It can be worse.
It is.
And there's always some funny part to it. It's never always just, something horrible happened.
You know, I once read it, or maybe I heard it from a comedian, you know, the good jokes comes from like on a very dark moment.
I agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
She always makes amputee jokes, which I'm like, whoa, should I be uncomfortable? Should I laugh? I laugh.
Exactly. Pick one or the other.
I can make the jokes. And like Amal can make the jokes.
Yeah.
But I found, because I used to make a lot of jokes, and I found that before. Okay. And I found that you can only do that with select few people, because if you make too many jokes, there are people that think that it's okay to make like excessive jokes back. Like every now and then cracking an amputee joke, it's okay. Yeah. But I found myself in a position when I was in my mid-20s where there was a coworker who would just make excessive amputee jokes because I allowed him to be comfortable by making those jokes. So it's definitely been a learning experience, like as a disabled person. And you know, it's important to acknowledge that not everyone feels that way. And I don't want to be the reason why another person's feelings are hurt because I'm running around making amputee jokes with every Tom, Dick, and Harry. So I try to be more cautious about it now. I feel like this is a comfortable setting for us. And I feel like there's Somali Nemo between us, so you'll always consider my feelings.
Absolutely.
I don't know. It's just different. It was an American person, of course.
Yeah. That's what I was gonna say. It's a Ajnabi person.
Yeah. So, but I really do feel like that was, for a lot of people, they hear that story and they're like, oh my goodness, you've gone through so much. That was just the beginning for me. Like, I feel like that was the foundation that was necessary and needed to be laid in order to prepare me for the rest of my life.
Absolutely. And I was gonna ask you that. So how did you cope with once you get up and start to move?
I was actually very lucky. I don't know if it's okay to say lucky, but I was fortunate enough to know someone that lost their leg.
Okay.
Like a month
Somali?
prior to me. No,
Okay.
it was an Ajnabi.
Okay.
And I saw.
Was it a fellow bike?
It was a motorcycle person. Yes.
Okay.
He was actually the first cousin of my friend that was with me the day that I had my accident, and she turned left and I turned right. And I think because of how he dealt with his amputation, he became very negative and very depressed, and he was yelling at everybody around him. And I remember even being at the accident scene. He got hit by a U-Haul truck.
Oh.
Yeah, and the U-Haul just kept going, but he didn't handle it well. It was a hit and run. And his story was really tragic too. Like, he was breeding dogs, and one of his dogs attacked his children, and he was from Dayton, and he was rushing to get home. He got that phone call, and because he was rushing to get home, he actually didn't break any laws. He was just sitting at a red light, and the U-Haul just turned into him and just kept going. And he lost the exact same leg in the exact same way. He's a left above the knee amputee. But everyone would complain about him. Oh my God, he's so negative. Oh my God, he's so depressed. He just yells at everyone. He's blaming everyone, for what's happened to him. I didn't want that. I didn't want that. So I made a very conscious effort to be opposite of what he was, because it's no one else's fault. It was my qadar.
And it is so easy to switch onto the negative side.
It is very easy.
Very easy.
It definitely was a conscious choice. It wasn't something that just happened naturally, where it was like, I wish I could sit back and be like, I'm just a great, happy person. But that's not the case. Like, I made a very conscious choice not to go down the dark, rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And alhamdulillah, I did. Mind you, I was 19 when I lost my leg. Wow. Just 19 years old. I'm now 35. And I feel like I've lived more life than most people that I encounter. Since then, we could fast forward to adulthood. I married at 27. I found my 𝐵𝐷 in Pakistan. So I married someone overseas, and then Trump became president. Oh, wow. Which prevented us from being together. So I was spending a lot of time overseas.
Going back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Then I got pregnant, and I was excited. We'd been married for years at that point, and up until that point, I wasn't ready for a child. And so I decided, okay, we're doing this. Yeah. Well, I didn't decide, we decided, I guess. And I came home, because prior to that, I did miscarry, and I miscarried back home. So I immediately came back to the States, just because the medical resources are here. Absolutely. And it's better to be here. So I ended up delivering at 24 weeks, which is very, very early. My daughter stopped growing. So let me rewind a little bit. I got sick. I found out the gender of my daughter in February. She was due in June, June 1st. And finally found out the gender, January. I found out her gender, and I just came down with this random illness where I couldn't breathe. I felt like the circulation in my body just wasn't happening. I kept going to the hospital, and I would tell my OB, listen, I can't breathe. I wasn't coughing. I was short of breath, and when I laid down at night, I would start coughing, but it felt like I was coughing to get air, Just didn't make any sense to me. I would go over and over, and they would just talk about medical neglect for people of color. I definitely experienced that, because they kept telling me that I was fine and that I was overreacting, and that my blood pressure just kept getting higher and higher and higher. And mind you, I didn't have high blood pressure. And I kept telling them, like, there's something wrong with my lungs.
Didn't that raise like a red flag to them when the pressure gets high?
They just thought it was normal gestational high blood pressure. And I would tell them, like, there's something in my lungs. Like, I feel like I have pneumonia, or can you please do your due diligence? I was sent by my OB to labor and delivery for like 4 times. And they would send me home within like an hour every single time. They would check the baby and they'd say, the baby's fine. Oh, your blood pressure's really high. We're just going to increase your blood pressure dosage. It got so bad. Like, I couldn't sleep. I would sit up just because when I laid down, the circulation in my body stopped.
Right.
And I knew, and I don't know how to describe it, but I knew there was no blood circulating throughout my body, like, or at least throughout my limbs. It felt like I had bricks as arms and legs, and they just weren't taking me seriously. I tried to sneak. Yeah, I was definitely gaslit. I tried to sneak into the ER, and the second they found out I was pregnant, they kicked me out and sent me to labor and delivery. And I begged. I'll never forget. I begged that doctor. I said, please do your due diligence. Something's wrong. I'm telling you, something's wrong. Again, she said, you're 20 weeks pregnant. At this point, I was just 20 weeks pregnant, and I'm begging them. You're 20 weeks pregnant. You should be feeling the baby pushing up on your lungs. And I'm like, I barely feel this thing kick. Like, I've barely experienced a kick. How are you telling me that this baby's big enough to push up on my lungs, which are up here, and the baby's, should be a lot lower and a lot smaller at 20 weeks. So that was like a Thursday, Friday. And mind you, they made me feel really stupid. They made me feel, I was emotionally gaslit. It was horrible. So that whole weekend I was miserable, and I thought to myself, like, are you going to move forward with this? Are you going to continue to be persistent, or are you going to let them shut you up? Because they were definitely shutting me up. And Sunday I just was like, Amren, what have you got to lose other than your child? What have you got to lose other than your child? And that's the one thing you don't want to lose. So if they think you're crazy, so what? If they hate you, so what? You could get a new doctor if she decides to no longer see you. Yeah. Even if I was having some sort of like manic moment, like, what have I got to lose other than my child? And I'm not willing to sacrifice that. So I called the doctor on Monday morning and I accused them of negligence. And I said, you guys are being negligent. I keep telling you guys something's wrong with me. And I've been sent home 4 times. And no one's taking me seriously. And I'm calling to officially notify you guys of the negligence that's taken place. And I think that scared my OB. Because she said, you know what? I'm not the one that's been sending you home. It's whoever's on call. So then she's like, go back to labor and delivery. And I'm going to make sure that they do not send you home. We're going to do a full checkup on you. So she sends me back. They take me straight into a like overnight room. And they finally start digging. And they gave me my first chest x-ray. Mind you, I'd been there no one had ever been willing to give me a chest x-ray. And I had pneumonia. I'd been suffering with pneumonia for 4 weeks. My blood pressure was rising because I had pneumonia. Yeah. Like when your body's suffering, your blood pressure rises.
Absolutely.
So they said, well, you're not going home. And we're so happy that you were so persistent. And now we see that your child stopped growing and your child is less than 1 pound and your child should be 2 pounds by now. So we won't be letting you go home until you deliver your baby. So from that moment on, I was hooked up to monitors. And I ended up delivering at 24 weeks, and she was less than 1 pound. Before delivery, a doctor had even come to me to discuss the option of not providing her medical care after she's born because she was so small, and the chances of her surviving, and the equipment will even be too big to use for your child. It's made for babies that are born at 1 pound. And based on the measurements, she's under 1 pound and it can actually do more damage than help. And I told him, I have a nephew who in 1998 was born 1 pound, 10 ounces. He is 22 years old now and he's fine. Back then he was just 20, but I'm like, he's fine. And if in 1998, they could save a 1 pound, 10-ounce baby. You know, even if my baby's 400 grams and 500 is the preference for this hospital, do what you have to do. Do your due diligence, which they did. Alhamdulillah. Otherwise, it would have been a big issue. But which they did. And they have this thing that they say in the NICU that I found out later, that when it comes to like survivors, babies, they're actually grouped and categorized from strongest to weakest. And first are African girls, then African boys, then like Black American girls, Black American boys, and then it like goes into like other cultures, and like the weakest babies are usually the Caucasians. And it's due to genetics, actually. It's actually attributed to genetics. And she thrived, alhamdulillah. She had a lot of obstacles to overcome. They perforated her esophagus when they were intubating her because she was born, and she screamed when she came out. Like, she actually screamed. I had a C-section, and it was the weirdest little cat sound. And, yeah, my cousin was like, oh, that's the baby. And she didn't need oxygen for a little bit, and then they decided she needed oxygen. So when they intubated, they perforated her esophagus, so she couldn't eat for 7 days. And eventually she survived, long story short. But she was intubated for 2.5 months in the NICU. She spent 117 days in the NICU. And consequently, the same machine that saved her life caused lung cancer, or not lung cancer, lung disease. So she has something called BPD, which is like chronic lung disease for babies. And they didn't expect her to meet many milestones, but alhamdulillah, she has. Like, she's awesome. Like, she's starting to talk. She sings. She knows her alphabets. She's 2. She might be on the spectrum. I don't know. Like, she hasn't been diagnosed. But sometimes she's just blah, 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 and then other times she's really quiet. But I'm a first-time mom. I'm just doing my due diligence and getting as much resources and doing as many exams as possible just to make sure that she has a good life.
What's her name?
Selma. Yeah, Selma Aya.
Selma Aya.
Yeah. So, yeah, I feel like she has actually, my journey with her has been the toughest one because, like, I've watched her turn blue. Like, I didn't leave the NICU. Like, I went from my delivery room to her NICU room, and I slept in there with her for 117 days. And the things that I've witnessed, I feel like no parent should see. Like, there was definitely a night that I thought I would be planning, you know, a janazah, like, you know, and alhamdulillah, she bounced back. Like, I saw her heart rate drop to 8.
She's strong, mashallah.
8. Oh, mashallah. And she's so cute.
I wonder where she get that from.
I can't even claim it. She looks like her dad.
No, but the strength.
But she definitely gets the strength from me. I used to actually say that. I'm like, if I'm her mother, she's got a chance. Yeah. Because I feel like I've pulled through so much in my life. Yeah. But these are definitely the 2 most impactful stories that I have to tell. You know, and I had to go through all of that alone. Yeah. Because my husband's still back home. We just got Biden. We just ended the Muslim ban, you know? So, and that was definitely the hardest part. Absolutely the hardest part. I've been put in a position where I've completely had to stop my life to invest in giving a good life to this child, making sure she doesn't fall behind developmentally, making sure that if there are red flags that they're caught and not neglected. I've quit my job. I've been a stay-at-home mom for 2 years, which I never in a million years thought would be the circumstances or like my life at all. Like, I didn't intend to quit my job when I had her. When I actually went back to work after I had her, and it was when she came home that I never went back because she came home on oxygen. So I became a stay-at-home nurse, controlling, and she had all these machines still hooked up to her when she came home. But alhamdulillah, we're definitely here now. It's been such a pleasant journey. I am currently looking forward to reestablishing me as an individual, not just as a mother, but as Amren Youssouf. and she will be starting early intervention soon. Where she'll be receiving like physical therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy. And I'm returning to work because I feel like at this point, it's her.
Yeah.
I feel like there's no more that I can do other than take her to her appointments and make sure that she's getting whatever intervention that she needs. But like the coddling it's like she's 2 now. She's extremely independent. You know, she just drags me to open doors that she can't reach. You know, and I'm like, no, there's a child locked there for a reason, sister. But yeah, so that has been my most recent journey. And that's why I say we're still in the thick of it. Because until she's helping me with my daily chores.
Yep. Boy, do I got a plan for you.
Until I can say, Hoya, can you go get that for me and bring it back? I'm still in the thick of it. But we're at the finish line. Alhamdulillah. We're definitely at the finish line.
Amren, I mean, it just, the strength that it takes to go through what you had went through, the process that you experienced, nothing but a mad respect.
Thank you.
Nothing but a mad respect.
I definitely appreciate that.
As a mother, Salma has the best mom that anybody can hope for.
I think I'm what she needed. You know, I feel like it would be so much harder for someone who had like this easygoing life. You know, and I feel like I've never really had an easygoing life. You know, every time things like are going smoothly, there's always been a curveball.
Yeah.
And it's like always really dramatic curveballs. So I am what she needed, and she is exactly what I needed, which goes to prove that Allah knows best.
Absolutely.
Allah absolutely knows best. And, you know, what He wills, we can plan, but He will plan for us.
Absolutely.
And His plan will always be the better plan.
Absolutely.
I meet people all the time, and they're like, oh my gosh, Amren, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you were able to carry yourself through an amputation and live in quarantine for 2 years. Oh my God, subhanallah. And I'm like, Abayal, if it happened to you, you would man up.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day,
Yeah.
when push comes to shove, we all have it in us. I don't believe that there are people that can't do it. There are people that underestimate their capabilities.
Right.
And we're definitely capable of it. But at the end of the day, like whatever imtihan I have within this dunya, like it's good for me. It's okay. I'll take it for now. Like, you know, just let me get to a good level of Jannah, inshallah.
The real life.
Yeah.
It's akhirah.
Absolutely.
If somebody is going through slightly what you went through and had the opportunity to listen to you speak, what would you say to that person?
Keep chugging, choo-choo train. That's actually one of my favorite sayings. Whenever I meet someone that's going through hardship, I'm just like, don't stop. Keep chugging. Don't stop and like soak in your misery, because that is how you get stuck there. Just keep going. Like just say, I'm almost done. I'm almost through it. Just keep going. Don't stop. Whatever you do, don't stop. Just look at the tunnel and see the light at the end of the tunnel, and put laser focus on it and head for it. Whatever you do, don't stop. Keep chugging. So that's the only advice I give if anyone's going through hardship. You will overcome it. Period.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
No problem. Hopefully I've given you, some good material to use. I really appreciate you considering me for your podcast. Inshallah khair. May Allah make this something that's beneficial for you and the community, and you have the opportunity